Hey everybody, this is Doomhammer giving you the second video of the 2014 off season. And what we have here is the top free agent in this class is Matthew Stafford. So Stafford has had some ups and downs with his career in Green Bay. The Packers are trying to re-sign him in free agency, but he did want to test the market. So he has bids with Kansas City, the Colts, Giants, Packers, and the Seahawks. Stafford was the 6th ranked passer in the league. He had 4,043 yards, 40 touchdowns, but 21 interceptions. He's had a decent career so far. He's made the playoffs, I think, once or twice, but it's been pretty difficult. So he's wanting likely out of Green Bay. We'll see if he returns. Then there's Larry Fitzgerald, who has been with the Atlanta Falcons for multiple years. He was paired with Peyton Manning last year. But right now, he wanted to test free agency, and Atlanta doesn't have a whole lot of money. So we have the Chicago Bears, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Arizona Cardinals all vying for his services. Then you've got Antonio Brown, who's likely going to be leaving Green Bay as well, because Green Bay is kind of getting a mini rebuild, considering how poor their season was last time. And so you've got the New Orleans Saints, and then who else but the New York Jets to bring somebody like Antonio Brown in. Golden Tate, we look at where he could go, looking at the Cincinnati Bengals or the Detroit Lions. And so Golden Tate, he's been a solid receiver who's for the Chicago Bears, so he's likely going to the Motor City or to Cincinnati. Then Jeremy Maclin, a Tampa Bay Buccaneer wide receiver for many years. He is now looking to find a new team, and so far he's got interest from the AFC West, Denver Broncos and the San Diego Chargers. So does he join Bradford or does he join Aaron Rodgers? Some more targets. We got Javid Best, who's also a Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back. He's like an 80 overall that was behind Darren McFadden. He filled in great when he was injured, but Javid Best is trying to be more of a starter. So the Bengals and the Bills are vying for his services. One of the top offensive linemen, or the top O lineman, is Alex Mack. Alex Mack has been with the Detroit Lions as their center. He's an 82 overall. He's only, not only, but he's 27 years old. He's been a pretty good quality center in the league. Definitely someone that is worth vying for. Let me see. In his overall, 1, 2, 3, 4. He is the 4th best center in the league. And he is up for grabs, leaving the Detroit Lions, potentially joining Dallas, Miami, Chargers, or the Vikings, all playoff teams. Then Emmanuel Sanders is also hitting the free agency market, and the New England Patriots are looking for his services. And the Atlanta Falcons are considering signing him, likely to maybe be a replacement for Larry Fitzgerald if he decides to go to Georgia. Demaryius Thomas, he is leaving Baltimore after their horrible season, and you can see the Washington Commanders and the Seahawks are looking for him. Malcolm Kelly, who's been significantly better in my franchise than others, he was starting out with, I forget where Malcolm Kelly started, but he went to Pittsburgh for a few years. He went to the Patriots. No, that's what it was. He was with the Steelers the whole time. So he was drafted by Pittsburgh, was at 6'4", big receiver. And then he also went to the Patriots last year. Now it's Denver, Green Bay, and Buffalo looking for his services. Some top defensive free agents. We have Mario Williams, Geno Atkins. You can see Mario Williams is the top target for free agency. Williams with the Patriots, Rams, Giants, Chiefs, and Colts all vying for him. He was traded for by the Giants this season, and then he didn't want to come back. So the Giants are trying to sign him in free agency again, hoping he returns. Geno Atkins is getting similar interest from the Patriots and the Rams at defensive tackle. Everson Griffin, the former Patriot. The reason why the Patriots are trying to build up their D-line is you see Everson Griffin has left the Patriots. And so he's looking at the Seahawks, the Bengals, or the Bills. Now, the Bengals have a lot of offers out because they were a really bad team and they have a lot of money to spend. So they were able to really try to pick up some talent. Then you got Lawrence Jackson. He is looking at the Bengals or the Titans. And probably the biggest free agent in this entire class is the Atlanta Falcons outside linebacker, Clay Matthews. He's at 88 overall. I believe he is like the best outside. I think he's definitely the best left outside linebacker. Let me double check. Left outside linebackers. Okay, he's the third behind Lawrence Timmons and DeMarcus Ware. He's an 88 overall. And on the other side, he would be the second because it's Von Miller. And then David Harris is an 86. And you got Pittsburgh vying for him, the Jaguars, which be shocked if he goes there, and then the Carolina Panthers, who are a division rival. So where do they go? Well, Matthew Stafford, of all the teams he could have picked, he chose the Seahawks. Blows my mind. I didn't think he'd go there. That's not where I would have gone. But I threw an offer, and Matthew Stafford wants to join Pete Carroll in one of the toughest divisions in football right now. He's got to go up against Drew Brees with the San Francisco 49ers, Andrew Luck with the Rams, and the Super Bowl winning champion Andy Dalton and the Cardinals. But apparently Stafford thinks that he can do it, and he's going to stick with the NFC. And then replacing him is Eli Manning. Now, Eli Manning may not be the actual starter for the Packers. They may look to the draft. They'll probably try to make a trade, but he's too high of an overall to leave in free agency. And Green Bay, not having a real successful nab at any quarterback, decides to take the veteran who did lead the Chiefs to a first-place seed 1 year, and he's been very active in the league, but has bounced around recently. And then here's a big free agency haul. So again, you got Stafford being paired with Demaryius Thomas in Seattle, and then Fitzgerald and Alex Mack. Dallas did a really good job winning this free agency, and I will be doing a breakdown of each team who they signed. I just want to give you the top targets now. Brown is deciding to go to the big city, New York. I think that's a perfect fit for Antonio Brown. I think his attitude fits a big city. Then you've got Golden Tate going to the Bengals. So I guess he decided to take some money, and he's willing to go to a startup team. He's going to join Mike Zimmer in the Cincinnati Bengals and the rebuild. And then Jeremy Maclin's going with Aaron Rodgers. So he's going to be paired with Santonio Holmes there in San Diego. And then you've got Emmanuel Sanders choosing to go to the Falcons. And he's going to be paired likely with Peyton Manning. And then Malcolm Kelly is going to the Mile High City to catch passes from Sam Bradford. It's going to be him and A.J. Green, Mohamed Sanu. As for those top defensive targets, Mario Williams goes to New England to join Belichick. Geno Atkins going to the Rams. Everson Griffin also going to Seattle. So Seattle gets Matthew Stafford, Demaryius Thomas, Everson Griffin. Big splash there in free agency for Pete Carroll. Lawrence Jackson going to the Titans. Sean Lee going to the Jaguars. Then you've got Clay Matthews going to the division rival, the Panthers. So the Panthers used to be that dominant defense. They kind of slumped these past few years. They are the 16th ranked defense. Last year, Falcons were number 1 ranked defense. So we're going to see if the Falcons can keep that high ranked defense, or if the Panthers are able to really explode, adding Clay Matthews to their linebacking core, which was desperately needed. Because they've got a good pass rush. They've got a good defensive back core, one of the best defensive backs in the league. Devin McCourty, Sam Shields, Chris Harris Jr., Daniel Manning, Michael Huff. So adding Clay Matthews gives them that linebacker they've desperately needed. Robert Ayers goes to the Eagles. Brandon Spikes goes from Pittsburgh to the Bengals. I believe it was Pittsburgh. Let's double check. Yep, it was Pittsburgh, so he goes to the division rival. TJ Ward leaves Cleveland for the Buffalo Bills. And then Brian Orakpo, who was from the Dallas Cowboys, leaves Dallas. And again, Dallas had a few hits there on linebacking core because they lost Brian Orakpo. And then let's see, do they also have, let's see, where did Sean Lee come from? Sean Lee, let's do a quick search there. Oh, Sean Lee was with the Titans before. Now he's switching over to the Jaguars. So some backup quarterbacks that were signed. So Michael Vick, even though he still has a decent overall, he is still perceived as, he's going to start out as the backup because Geno Smith is going to likely start for the Saints. However, if he gets hurt or starts to struggle, Michael Vick can step in. Brady Quinn, who was pretty good, decent with the Colts up until last season. Gets a chance with the Bengals. We will likely see the Bengals draft a quarterback. I don't know if they're going to do that number one because there is Jadeveon Clowney and Blake Bortles as the quarterback. So Bengals could go with Bortles. They could go with Bridgewater, but they at least have a bridge quarterback there with Brady Quinn. And as people know, Phillip Rivers has been a backup in my league for quite a while. He's backup with the Jets a few years, backing up Alex Smith. He's at like a 77 overall. He's now going to back up Andrew Luck in St. Louis. Derek Anderson is going to the Cardinals, and he went to the Cardinals in real life, but he's going to back up Andy Dalton, the Super Bowl MVP. Tim Tebow is leaving. Let's see, where was he last year? Tim Tebow was with the Bills last year as a starter. He played like the entire year, but the Bills want to go with E.J. Manuel, their rookie, or their sophomore rookie now. And so Tim Tebow is going to be a backup for Cam Newton in Miami. Let's just say the Florida Gator is going to join the Florida Dolphins. Kevin O'Connell, the kind of like my Matt Castle, Fitzpatrick, McCown. He's going to the New York Giants. They have Matt Barkley, who's supposed to be their starter this season, but Kevin O'Connell will assist him as the backup. Byron Leftwich, backup in Buffalo. Joe Webb, former Dallas Cowboys backup, now Ravens backup. Carson Palmer, who is leaving the Giants. I mean, they were kind of replacing him with Matt Barkley. He goes to the Oakland Raiders. He's going to be the backup for Matt Ryan. But I figured that veteran presence, I didn't know where to put him, and I felt going right to the Raiders was the best choice. Raiders were a team that Palmer did go to when he left Cincinnati. He was supposed to be their starter, but right now there's not really as many starter jobs available. And then you got Tony Romo, who was with the Patriots a few years. Now he is with the San Diego Chargers. Other offensive players, Marino leaves Cincinnati, going to Arizona. Frank Gore leaves the Eagles to go to Tampa Bay. Eagles also don't have a lot of money, so they're hard to pay someone. They got Giovanni Bernard, who's going to be their running back moving forward. Ben Tate, who is with the Carolina Panthers, they like their dual running back system, and so Ben Tate wants to be the starter, and he has a chance there with the St. Louis Rams. And then you've got Leonard Pope, the tight end, goes to the Arizona Cardinals. He was with the Patriots many years, but the Patriots had difficult time with salary cap. They might have been able to make a play for him in free agency because they did free up some room to make that move for Mario Williams. They signed some other people I'll show you later. But Leonard Pope was a real Cardinal, and he ends up going to the Cardinals. And with him, I'll just jump over Devin Aromashodu. He was with the Colts and the Giants in his career. Now he's going to the Super Bowl champs. Eric Decker, who's not that highly rated, but thought he was worth mentioning, goes to Oakland. Devin Hester leaves the Chargers as one of the top speedy return men, and he is joining Cam Newton in Miami and Jim Harbaugh. Darius Haywood-Bay is leaving the Washington Commanders, going to the Lions. James Jones decides that he wants to go play in Green Bay, so he played in Green Bay in real life. James Jones has been with the 49ers, and so he's been in the NFC. And then Brandon Marshall, that's an interesting move here. He had a lull kind of season with the Saints. That's where he was picked. He had 1,000 yards receiving, but the Saints have been that bad that Brandon Marshall wanted to find a better team. Ironically, he goes to the Ravens and not the Saints because, the Ravens aren't that good. But I guess Marshall likes the team that Dan Quinn is putting together there in Baltimore. So that's some of the top free agents. So breaking down each team, I'll try to go through this with decent speed, but giving you an overview. So the Cardinals had issues with running back. They had Darren Sproles, Beanie Wells, but now they bring in Noshawn Marino and Dexter McCluster. They also have Devin Aromashodu, Leonard Pope. They bring in Matt Spaeth, Matt Slauson, Dakota Watson at linebacker, A.J. Bowie, who's a younger cornerback. They bring in a veteran, Chris Gamble. He's like an 81 overall. Didn't have many people vying for him in free agency, so the older cornerback might be their fourth stringer. But with injuries, this is some good depth for the Cardinals. And then Jonathan Babineau. And they released Dan Carpenter because he missed like 2 extra points, one in the NFC Championship game, one in the Super Bowl. And I said enough's enough, so I got rid of Dan Carpenter, and they bring in Oakland Raiders Steven Gostkowski. So they take their Super Bowl opponent's kicker and one of the best kickers in the league to the champs. The 49ers have Bruce Gradkowski, Roddy White, Justin Smiley, and Roman Harper. Roddy White was in Cleveland, and he had a great year in Cleveland. He actually had 1,000 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns, but Cleveland has a new coach, Mike Pettin, and they're trying to get younger. So although Roddy White was a pretty reliable target, he is now going to the Bay Area, joining the San Francisco 49ers. The Rams, as we know, brought in Rivers and Ben Tate. They also bring in tight end Dennis Pitta, Jasper Brinkley, and then the big signings is Ray Edwards and Geno Atkins. So that really helps them on their defensive front. Andrew Sandejo also there with a strong safety. And then we got Seattle, who made some huge moves. So they lose some of their mediocre players, and they bring in Stafford, Demaryius Thomas, Aaron Sears. And then these two are much older, Justin Tuck and Uosi Umenyiora. But because they brought in Stafford and Thomas, I looked at it as they are going to be going for everything. So they bring in the Super Bowl champion Justin Tuck from the Cardinals, so a division opponent, Patriots, Everson Griffin, and then Osi Umenyiora from the Bills. So some older pass rushers as well as Everson Griffin. Great moves for them. Then we got the Chicago Bears. Now the Chicago Bears lose Golden Tate. They traded for Darius Hayward-Bay. That's what I think I mentioned with the Commanders, but he leaves. He was traded mid-season. That's where I got confused. But they bring in Victor Cruz, Andre Smith, Marshall Newhouse, Lofa Tatupu, Ryan Mundy, and then the big signing there, Broderick Bunkley at defensive tackle. They lost Sean Lissamore and Ricardo Matthews, so I think Bunkley's an upgrade. And then Thomas Morstead. Then the Detroit Lions, they signed former first-round pick Brandon Weeden to be the backup behind Ryan Tannehill. They bring in Jacob Hester at fullback. They lost Owen Marisic. They're the ones that signed Darius Hayward-Bay from their rival. They also have John Carlson, Shane Olivier, who was like the best. Is he the best right tackle? He came from Cleveland. Let's see. Let's go to the right tackles real quick. And Shane Olivier is the best offensive tackle in the league at an 89 overall. He is tied with Michael Ruse from the Eagles. But with that, the Detroit Lions get a solid right tackle that's going to help Reggie Bush when he's doing runs on the right side. It's going to help their passing protection. And Detroit almost made the Super Bowl, so that's a good addition for them. Big signing, big tackle there. Brian Arakpo, another huge signing for Detroit. Nothing looks better than when you're able to upgrade and get a big dude to sack the quarterback. So Brian Arakpo is coming to Detroit. And then, of course, Justin Harrell at DT. Then we see Green Bay with a lot of changes here. They lose Matthew Stafford, which is just absolutely devastating. They tried to get Malcolm Kelly at wide receiver, didn't get him. So they got Denario Alexander and James Jones. They get Lee Charles Bentley, who's been a pretty solid guard in this reality. He didn't have that career-ending staph infection like when he went to Cleveland in real life. They do get Vernon Golson from Cleveland, Jamarcus Webb, Vincent Ray, and Nate Allen. Then you got the Vikings with Kellen Davis. They bring in Davin Joseph, and he's probably the biggest right guard free agent. So top-notch pass blocker there and run blocker. Ryan Cook, Brad Jones, Linval Joseph, Lamar Houston, and Christian Ballard. Really, they lost like Marquise Colston, Dakota Watson, Jarius Byrd, but no one really that instrumental. Then we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay loses like Jeremy Maclin. They lose Denario Alexander, Evan Mathis, Geno Atkins. So some big hits there on their on who they lost. I don't know if they really did a good job replacing them. I mean, we have Frank Gore, who's a veteran running back, to sort of just be the backup like Javid Best was for Darren McFadden. We got Jacoby Ford, Sam Baker, Tyson Alualu, and Stephen Bowen. Then we got the Falcons. Now, Falcons were pretty busy. Peyton Manning actually hit free agency. A few teams bid on him, but then he decided to choose the Falcons offer and return. They bring in James Starks at running back after losing Steven Jackson and LeGarrette Blount. They have Emmanuel Sanders. So they beat the Patriots in getting that receiver. So they lost Larry Fitzgerald to Dallas, and that was the big loss for them this offseason. I mean, they lost and also they lost Clay Matthews. So Clay Matthews and Larry Fitzgerald are just 290 overall plus players. Atlanta lost a lot of talent. But they got Emmanuel Sanders trying to replace Larry Fitzgerald, give Manning an option to throw to. Brandon Myers, John Sullivan at center. Perry Riley Jr. is not terrible as a linebacker replacement, but he's not Clay Matthews. But he's trying to replace Daryl Washington and Daryl Smith. Then you got Nick Roach, Earl Mitchell, Chris Canty, and Andy Studebaker. Then we've got the Panthers, and they have a busy offseason, but their biggest success, of course, is signing Clay Matthews. They do sign Kevin Ogletree, as they lost Trenton Holiday, Maurice Stovall, but they bring in Travis Beckham as well, more of a backup tight end, Austin Howard, Charlie Johnson, so 2 bookend tackles, Don Carey, and Brian Price. Then we've got the Saints. Saints have Geno Smith, as I mentioned. They lost Byron Leftwich as the backup quarterback, and Michael Vick is now going to New Orleans to take on that role. Kevin Smith as running back. They pull in Mark Mariani from the Eagles, and he's got like 95, 96 speed, kind of crazy. They bring in Gary Barnage, the tight end, as they lose Fendi Onobin and Travis Beckham. They bring in Mike Gibson, more of a backup guard, Carlos Dansby, veteran linebacker, Rolando McClain, and Dan Williams. So they bring in some solid defensive players there near the end. Then you've got the Washington Commanders. Commanders are, they lost a lot, like with Michael Vick, Teo Johnson, a tight end. You might not know who he is, but he was pretty instrumental in my franchise for most of the teams he's played with. But they bring in Trent Edwards, just to be maybe a journeyman quarterback. They may take a quarterback in the draft. They bring in Quinn Johnson, Brandon LaFell, Mike Pollock, and then the big man up front, John Asamoah. Now, here's a team that I think won free agency. And they won free agency because they pick up a good backup running back for Adrian Peterson, Deji Karim, who was the starting running back for the Buffalo Bills. Fullback, John Connor, he's fine. But then it's Larry Fitzgerald. They get Mike Breezel, who is a veteran guard, and Alex Mack to really fix the inside of their line. They get Thomas Howard from the Dolphins, Major Wright, and Alan Branch. And let's see. And I just think that with Russell Wilson, Adrian Peterson, Larry Fitzgerald, they have Jason Witten. This offense is going to be very formidable, and they have been the laughingstock of the NFC East for quite a while. They have one playoff appearance in the entire series. I've done this in 12 seasons, but I think with the declining in Donovan McNabb and the Eagles, where as long as McNabb is a quarterback for the Eagles, they're going to be a Super Bowl contender. But once he's gone, I don't know who's going to take the helm with Philadelphia. And the Cowboys could take the lead in this division, especially with the type of team Mike Shanahan has developed. Then we got the Philadelphia Eagles. We got Tony Moecki, Donald Thomas at guard, and he's actually one of the better guards that was in free agency. Robert Ayers and Kamal Ishmael. Obviously, the Eagles don't have a lot of money. Their money's caught up with Ted Ginn. It's caught up with McNabb. It's caught up in Deshaun Jackson, Heath Miller, and they have a lot of solid players, so they don't have as much room and flexibility. I do believe when McNabb retires, they're going to have a bigger splash in future free agencies. Then we've got the New York Giants. So they move on from Carson Palmer. They bring in Kevin O'Connell and the journeyman Jeff Smoker. They have Teo Johnson, who's been with the Commanders. He's been with the Browns. He's been kind of around the league. And so he goes to the Giants now as a sort of a backup kind of tight end role. He might get some more playing time, though. John Greco, who's going to be moved inside. Bruce Campbell, Sharik McManus. Then the big guy, not the big guy, but the star, Donta Robinson, cornerback. And then Tenard Jackson. Giants, I don't think they made as big of a splash as they could have. They were one that went for Matthew Stafford, and they went for try to get Mario Williams back. Just were unable to make either of those big-time free agents land in New York. Then we got the Denver Broncos. I think they had a more modest free agency. They did try for Jeremy Maclin, failed to get him, so they ended up going for Malcolm Kelly. They do bring in Josh Sitton, one of the better guards, Gerald Sensabaugh, Kentuan Balmer, and then Croy Bierman. And then we've got the San Diego Chargers. They make a lot of signings. Probably the biggest one is that Macklin signing. But they signed Joique Bell from Cleveland to be the backup for Arian Foster. They have Leonard Weaver, Chris Snee, who came from Cleveland. Browns had a lot of top-tier guards and offensive linemen, but now they are dispersed. So Olivier is in Detroit, and Chris Snee is in San Diego. Mike Lynn, Rob Sims, some other O-linemen, George Johnson, Al Woods, and then the kicker, Randy Bullock. Then you've got the Kansas City Chiefs. The quarterback, John Skelton, is going there maybe to be a journeyman, probably a backup. I suspect Kansas City will draft somebody or trade for somebody at quarterback as they move on from Brandon Weeden, Matt Castle, and Kevin O'Connell. Then you've got running back LeGarrette Blount, Andre Roberts, wide receiver, Dakota Watson, Colin McCarthy, Marvin Mitchell. You also got Jarius Byrd, Raphael Bush, and Vance Walker, along with Ziggy Hood. So Kansas City has been very active under their new coaching staff. And we'll see how this team emerges. And if they can get out from being one of the weakest teams in the league, that'd be pretty cool. Then we've got the AFC champions, the Raiders. They bring in a backup quarterback in Palmer, Eric Decker, Anthony McCoy, Adam Hayward, Rob Ninkovich, Tyson Jackson, Aubrey Jones, and then a kicker and a punter, Gano and Conan. Again, not too much of a splash for Oakland. They didn't really make too many major plays either, but they got mostly who they wanted to fill some of those voids that were caused in the re-signing period. The main person they lost was probably Steven Gostkowski, their kicker, and then Craig Davis at wide receiver, which is why Eric Decker comes in. Now we move to the north. We see the Cincinnati Bengals. Biggest signing there was Golden Tate. They get Charles Clay from the Eagles, who's a very low-rated tight end, but he's someone that still could be a starter. Cincinnati has not had good luck with tight ends, I got to tell you. They've been working with 66 overalls and 63 overalls. Charles Clay is just about that overall, but they got who they could get. Brandon Spikes, probably the second best free agent they got in this free agency class because Tate's obviously number one. You got Terrell Troop and Barry Church, along with Johnny Hecker, the punter. And then the Browns probably had the biggest splash in free agency, not really bringing in big names or anyone iconic. Yes, they got most of who they wanted, but they've got Dennis Dixon at quarterback, who just kind of is going to be the backup, filling in for Vince Young, because they have Terrell Pryor, who's their starter. They signed Tim Hightower, who's actually one of the higher rated running backs in free agency, but I just don't think he plays that well, so I thought, give him to Cleveland. Then you got Johnny Knox, David Osbury at wide receiver. Osbury could actually move over to tight end. They do sign Michael, I'm not even going to say his name, Humanawanui. They bring a plethora of O-linemen, because again, they lost a lot of O-linemen, so Doug Free, Max Jean Gillies, Patrick Omame. They bring in a veteran linebacker, Darrell Washington, because they are switching to a 3-4 defense, so they need some linebackers. Kerry Rhodes, Robert McLean. They also bring in some pass rushers like Paul Kruger, Jerry Hughes. Terrell Brown is a very good signing for them. He's a solid cornerback, kind of replacing Stanford Routt, who is one of the best cornerbacks in the league and was with Cleveland ever since he was drafted. The dude was fantastic. But again, nobody wanted to come back to Cleveland. They had a really rough year. Jerry Hughes, Paul Soliari, and then Ron Brace. So Cleveland lost a lot of people. They also, TJ Ward, they lost Rubin, Cameron Wimbley, Chris Snee, Darren College, Roddy White, Anthony Gonzalez, Felix Jones, Joique Bell. So they have to replace a lot of those players. Even Troy Polamalu, who used to be with the Seattle Seahawks. The Browns traded the first-round pick for him when they were semi-contending for a playoff spot. And let's just say he had about 2 years with the Browns, or a year and a half, and that's all it ever lasted with Polamalu. Then you got the Ravens. They bring in a backup quarterback. And actually, he could possibly be a starter because Colin Kaepernick ain't doing so swell. Then you got Brandon Marshall at wide receiver, Max Unger. And then they steal Stanford Routt from the Browns, one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Let me see. I think he is, let's see, what's his overall? He's an 85 overall. He did just turn 30 years old. So still a top solid cornerback for them. And then you got Shiloh Keogh and Randy Starks. Then we move on to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has they made some big attempts and big swings, and unfortunately they missed on Clay Matthews. But they do bring in Montario Hardesty, Paul McQuistion. They steal the Cameron Wimbley from the Cleveland Browns. They get Louis Castillo, Roy Miller, and I figured to all you Steeler fans, we're gonna put Troy Polamalu on the Steelers so he can maybe end his career in Pittsburgh. They do have Deshaun Goldson, who's like an 84 overall, one of the better safeties in the league. And then they have the best safety in the league in Dante Whitner, who is 28 years old, X Factor, 97 overall. So Polamalu is not going to likely be a starter. He's not going to be a starter for them, quite frankly. But he is going to be a defensive back that when inevitably someone gets hurt, he might be able to fill in. And he is going to get number 43, I believe. And then Sam Koch as their punter. Bills, they get Javid Best, Eric Olson, TJ Ward, Brandon Mebane, and Red Bryant. And, of course, Byron Leftwich as the backup. Then the Miami Dolphins. They bring in Team Tebow, fan favorite, Devin Hester, speedster, kick returner. You got Seth Olsen at center and Craig Urbick at guard. They bring in a veteran linebacker in Lance Briggs. They bring another veteran in Antoine Barnes. They take Awusa Ansah, who was a really good cornerback for Cleveland, more of a young rising star, and of course he wanted out of Cleveland, so he goes to Miami. You got Jabril Wilson at safety, Lamar Woodley, and they bring in Dan Carpenter from the from the Arizona Cardinals. He's still a highly rated kicker. He just missed 2 extra points, so I just said he's gone from Arizona. And Mac McBriar. Then you got the Jets, who bring in Kellen Clemens, who was a real Jet in real life. He's going to be a backup, kind of filling Phillip Rivers' spot behind Alex Smith. Antonio Brown, the superstar wide receiver, goes to the Jets. They'll pair him up with Percy Harvin. You got Tom Santee, Eugene Monroe, who's a big left tackle. Good signing there. Probably best left tackle in free agency. Ramon Foster, Dylan Gandy, some interior, and then Brino Raciamini, more of a depth signing. Then Frank Zombo, DeJuan Morgan, and Taylor Mays. So a pair of safeties also going to the Jets. Now the Patriots, who didn't have as much money, I mean, again, they did go for some of the, they went all in for Emmanuel Sanders and Geno Atkins. Missing them allowed them to hire or to sign more free agents. I forgot they went for Henry Melton when I went all in for Mario Williams. But that still helps them with their interior defense, which they definitely need some help with. So Mario Williams, Henry Melton, Jared Odrick, and they can even slide into defensive tackle if they need. Because they lost Broderick Bunkley, and Cam Thomas, Jerry Hughes, Everson Griffin. So a lot of defensive line support is gone. They lose Leonard Pope, Malcolm Kelly. So they have some holes to fill here. We see Danny Woodhead coming over from Detroit. That's nice to see him in New England. They signed Joel Dreesen and Tony Scheffler, Rick Henry, Chris Chester, Jermaine Cunningham, Jared Odrick as well, and then Nick Novak. So Patriots fill in some gaps, very needed. Again, they're another team that suffers with salary cap challenges. Colts, they had some moves. They tried really hard to get some players like Matthew Stafford, Mario Williams, but just couldn't win them. So they get Jason Snelling, a fullback, Evan Mathis, their best free agent signing, and then Stevie Brown. Colts are one of the losers of this free agency, I believe, not really pulling in anyone worth anything. Then you got the Jaguars, who bring in a wide receiver and Anthony Gonzalez from Cleveland, Sergio Kindle, Sean Lee, probably the best free agent acquisition, along with Kevin Burnett, and then Eric Walden. So the Jaguars trying to brush up some of their defensive depth there, losing Bobby Carpenter, Quentin Groves, and their linebacking, as well as losing Dante Robinson, which was a cornerback they lost. Texans, very similar. They didn't really go for many people. They went for a tight end, Anthony Fasano, Jamal Brown, and Cam Thomas. They lost Barry Cofield, Goster Chirilis, Dennis Pitta, Jason Snelling, but no one really substantial. So they didn't really lose much, but they also didn't gain much this offseason. Then you've got the Tennessee Titans, and the Titans signed Saints tight end Fendi Anobin, Sheila Rochelle from offensive guard. They get Bobby Carpenter from the Dolphins, Junior Gillette, Rocky McIntosh, and James Anderson. As you can see, a slew of linebackers coming to the Tennessee Titans. Lawrence Jackson, Ray McDonald, and then punter Chris Klug. A few trades. So Cleveland ends up trading Travis Benjamin for a 4th-round pick and I don't know if it's Jarrett Bush or Jermichael Bush or something like that to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now the Eagles have Ginn and Deshaun Jackson, both 98 or 99, 97 overall speed. Travis Benjamin also has that speed. And so this is a great trade for the Eagles to get a speedster receiver. And then they have a 4th-round pick giving up, and they pick up a safety. And then we've got the Cleveland Browns being, well, the Cleveland Browns. Because who else would give up a 3rd-round pick and a young receiver for a 33-year-old aging receiver like Andre Johnson? Well, you guessed it, the Cleveland Browns. So this trade is something that I think Cleveland would do. Patriots are trying to unload Johnson because he had a much larger contract. They wanted to free up some cap space to make some free agency moves, and they did. And they gave up their old receiver. They still have Brandon Tate. They had Chris Hogan, Devin Wiley. That's why they were trying to sign Emmanuel Sanders, but we'll see how they handle this offseason if they're able to make another move for a better receiver. But Cleveland pulls in the veteran wide receiver in what is a very depleted receiving core. And they will probably be active in the draft finding receivers too. But they do pull in Andre Johnson, which I guess some Browns fans would be happy about. Then the Packers decide that they want to take a risk and not live with Eli Manning and decide to trade for Brock Osweiler. So Mike Zimmer, I guess he's seen enough of what Osweiler could do last year and decided to give away Osweiler for a 6th-round pick. So Packers give up a 6th-round pick for a potential starting quarterback. So it's going to be a battle between Eli Manning and Brock Osweiler. Then the Oakland Raiders end up trading away their left tackle Donald Penn to the San Francisco 49ers. They pick up a younger left tackle, a 3rd-round pick in next year's draft, and a 6th-round pick in the years following draft in order to unload the contract of Donald Penn, and they like to see that they have a replacement ready for him coming up. Because they have Donald Penn is 30 years old or 31 years old and a superstar, and they drafted Terran Armstead last year, and the dude is hidden. He's got 80 overall. They have their replacement, so getting a haul for Donald Penn, freeing cap space, it was the move for Oakland. And then another little mini trade, I think it was like Ron Sands, I believe, from the Falcons. Falcons were pretty safety heavy, and so they decide that it's time to move on from that 6'9" overall. And the Ravens, who ironically, despite being a really good defensive team, needed a safety, so they bring in Sands. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it's maybe a little bit long, but you may have been able to play it on like fast loop or whatever. But those are the free agency and trades heading into the NFL draft. Looking forward to sharing that experience with all of you.